Static Leo. Welcome to the Static Lifestyle.
Island Heat Music.
Yeah. Just it. It's complicated. No, it's style. I slick with it. Slick. Pull through, baby, just stick with me. Gangsta up your footy. Get rich, stock chips, bout a milli. Brimmy, me still brimmy. Yeah, and my mother come first, dog. You see me? No ready for driving on the hearse in my pretty. Speak loud, not a fuck bird, very swiftly. Brimmy, yeah, up scheme. Fully. Life change up. No man rich now for try me a cup. Now watch your foot when my girls them a buy me a cup. Make me tell her straight up, we do this with the family dog. With my gun charge, go on. Money enough up in me duffel the bag. Swiss freeze for me wrist in my yard. British Ted gonna lad, them a real charge. Yeah, money. Hand it on the table, give me rocks with liquor honey. Chip it. See the drip? Yeah, fully.
Yo, life change fast, Ireland, you see me. Tech boy, y'all give her a tour front city. Fat smile, fat Kyle and the Billy. No listen them a talk, cause man know them silly. Up down, doing my business. They be my move swiftly, for me, y'all kiss me. Upstairs, up in the sky, I fuck with living. Any drinking, wrong side, we counting millions. Up down.
Bring me. Up scheme.
Me I tell a life sweet to me listen me chat. Yeah, me living my life by every tick of the clock. And you see my
Manners everybody. I'm Leopold Barnes, otherwise known as Static JA. I am just a part of the car community and currently I'm a member of the Static JA gang. Just a group of car enthusiasts come together to represent the static lifestyle. Of course, welcome to another vlog and big up Third World Society and YouTube channel. Static for me, well, static in general have different meanings. Static basically mean the suspension is not on airbags. So you're on regular springs, which is the stock springs, or you're on the coilovers or coil sleeves. So that is basically what static is. In terms of putting the capital S in static, as I would like to call it, which is what I think I'm doing, is to ensure that that suspension moves as little as possible. All right, and I think the less movement you have in that suspension, then the more closer you get to what static is. So that's what static is. So when it comes on to the car scene and my passion for it, I have always been, a fan of all type of cars. I love how everybody set their car. I'm a fan of every brand. And so what you find is I'd watch YouTube channels, have the different cinematographers like the Lowdown, Hartnett, Halcyon, which I've been featured on before, and those different vloggers who would showcase cars, and I get interested and say, wow, imagine being able to have that kind of stand set up in Jamaica and doing it right. So when I say stands, what am I talking about? You have different kind of stands. We know we have the flush look, where basically you have the side of the rim line up with the fenders, and then of course you have the tuck look where the rims are under the fender, and of course you also have those persons who have the poke look, like the Pro Box. 1 and 2 feet have those look. You tend to find cars that have smaller wheel wells tend to go for wider wheels to give it that kind of look. So part of that stance game kind of got me interested in the static life, and I've always then tried to ensure that I do it my way and do it the correct way. So as it relates to my car, currently I'm driving a 2008 JDM Honda Accord CL8. That is of course the 4-wheel version of the CL7, CL9, the Euro R, and of course all of those cars are of course the JDM versions of the Acura TSX, which is the USDM version. long and short, we know the JDM is just the Japan domestic market. You can also call it the Jamaica domestic market because just like Japan, we are right hand drive, and of course the UK. And then you have the USDM, which are the left hand drive vehicles, those cars coming out of America. And so I've always been a fan of this gen, and always wanted to set the car in a certain way that it have a vibe, it have a look. Personally for me, I think cars should have a certain height versus a truck. I've always said if you see a car and beside a SUV or a truck, it should have a different kind of stance. And that's how I got into the static life, and then started my journey to ensure that my car would have that kind of look. I've always been about that kind of look. In terms of my car and getting it to look the way it looks now and what I would call my perfect static look, the journey basically started with me getting the car stock, first owner in Jamaica. Alright, so clean title. And started going through different stages in terms of the cosmetics and ensuring that the car had the right body kit. Now, somebody will come to you and probably tell us that they're about the speed life, which I'm also about, but no longer so much living that life. Someone might say, is it easier to set my car in terms of body kits, etc., versus a speed life? And I would tell you, no, it's about the same. You'll find that body kits cost more than a turbo setup in most cases, especially if you're going for the rear, like a Mugen setup, which I am running. So I started with that, and I ensured that the car looked the way that I wanted it to look. I had an experience in terms of learning about the different types of rims. It's something that I was taking very casual. And I realized that no, it's very important the type of rims you're running on the car versus a cast rim versus a free flow rim versus a fully forged rim. So that's where I started first, put rims on the car. As Jamaicans, that is what we do. Set the car, we drop rims on it. And those rims were weighing 26, 28 pounds, very heavy. Like most of the rims that you will get out here from any local dealer unless you're bringing it in. So I started with that, setting the rims, and then after I put on rims, I say, you know what, time to get it to that height that I would want. And for me, I like taking things in stages. Rather than just going straight to the finishing line, I'd rather go through the journey. And for that process, I went with H&R Lowing Springs, straight out of Germany, authentic. Most of the persons who know me in the car community would know that when it comes down to what I get from a car, I always go for authenticity. I think that is important, to ensure that it's the genuine parts. And after lowering the car with H&R Springs, I got about a 2.5 inch drop because the CLA comes with positive camber, and you would say the car basically just even out. And I started rocking that life. So lowering springs is where I go first, ensuring that it was something that I could handle in terms of that height, and we started the process from there. And eventually I step up to the coilovers, and that in itself was another journey. So people wonder why I choose BC Racing or what suspension I end up going with. And for me, like I said, I started out with the H&R German springs. Those were very good. It got me to 1-2 inch drop. And then I decided to move up to coilovers. There's a lot of choices for coilovers on the market. And depends on the car model that you drive, you'll find that a certain brand coilover just runs better. Unless you're going to get a custom-made coilover like BC, which is what they are known for. If you're going to get standard coilovers, you're going to probably need to ensure that you research and get one that is right for your car. So you'll find that a TN might run good on a Corolla, because generally TNs come with a spring rate of 10 to 8K. And so for a Corolla that probably is not as heavy versus this Honda car that I'm driving, you'll find that it's not as bouncy. But for me, I was trying to go to static. And of course, I would want that to be as more rigid as possible. So I'm currently running BC Extreme Racing coilovers. Started out by going through the supplier directly because I know it was going to be a back and forth journey. As it is now, BC does not make coilovers specific to the CL8. And we talked about the CL8 earlier. It is the 4-wheel drive model of this version. And so what you find is that we need different spring rates and dampers to manage my car because of the weight that it carries. And of course, it being 4-wheel, we'd want to ensure that the suspension evens out better than a 4-wheel drive car. All of these factors you have to take into consideration. And that is why I went with BC coilovers. The process started simple, just ordering what was on the site and letting them know that I'd want more rigid coilovers for the rear because I actually have rear wheel spin versus the 4-wheel drive car. So that was done. I got the stock setup, which is about 12K front, 10K rear, dampened accordingly. That lasted about 2 to 3 months. What you'll find is that most persons purchase coilovers thinking that coilovers are forever lasting. Coilovers are shocks, and just like how your shocks can finish through going through probably a hard pothole, going through a big dip, launching, unfortunately, if that should happen to you, you'll find that you will blow a shock, and also the same way you will blow a coilover.
I am the one, the way your son don't need a...
Because I was driving the car solo, those dampers, and I will refer to them as dampers, but they're basically the shock valve, or some person call them the cartridges, got destroyed within 2 months, but I was still on warranty, which was assured to me by BC Racing, which is one of the reasons why I went with them. And so after blowing those dampers, we then contacted them. All parts are free during the warranty, but you will have to pay for shipping. And so I went for more rigid springs at the time. So I was leaving 12K, 10K, and at that time I went to 18 and 16K. So it was 18K at the front and 16K at the back. And that managed for a little while also, but then you find because of how low the car is riding and I'm removing all suspension moving because I'm going as static as I can, those shocks lasted for about probably another 2 months. My followers can tell you all of that was on my story, and I had to change them out again. And that's when we went to the drawing board and said, listen, let us do it right. I spoke to the technician for about 2 weeks online, and we were working out the weight of the car, how I want the car to ride, and see if we could build a damper, which is the shock, and get a spring rate, which is communicating with that new shock to ensure that my car will be able to ride at the height that I want, keep that some form of comfortable feel, and ensure that it will never lower out. That's the word that I'll use. And so that's how I ended up with BC Racing coilovers. A very important choice in making coilover for me, and it's different for everybody, is to ensure that you select a coilover that's rebuildable. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Shocks are not everlasting. That's what coilovers are now. It's just a coil over a sleeve. Alright, so hence coilovers. And so what you find is basically if you should destroy that shock, especially in Jamaica on these roads, you'll find you need to replace that. And if you get like a certain brand TN, a TN Basics, a Megan, I'm trying to remember some of the other shocks that are not rebuildable, you'll find when you blow that shock, you'll have to buy about the entire set. For me, all I did was I had to get the dampers and had them shipped. And now that my warranty is up, of course, getting a damper is 70 US. So my best advice to you as a consumer, if you're going to go into coilovers, ensure you get coilovers that are rebuildable, because you need to rebuild them. So we'll talk about choosing coilovers, the suspension, the right setup for you. How do you go about that? What's the process? First, you have to remember a very important term, and this is what you need to do as an informed buyer. Research. If you're going to buy coilovers right away, you know that you're going to spend a lot of money. Would you want to spend a lot of money on something that is not going to fulfill your need? Definitely not. So let's say you have an EK driver and he's saying, let me get a nice set of coilover and drop my car a certain height. What is your objective? Are you trying to slam the car? Because you have to ensure that you're going with an objective first. If you want to slam the car, then of course you would start researching other EK owners and how they get their car to look the way you would want. So you need to go on the forums. So for every model vehicle, so I'm going to use an EK and a Mark X. For every model vehicle, there are forums. And forums are basically where specific owners of a certain model meet and come together on the internet and talk about the problems they have, or give suggestion about the type of suspension setup they're running, or certain aesthetics look that they're doing. So for an EK owner, go on the forum, check it out, type in EK suspension, type in EK lowering, type in EK slam look, if that's what you're going for, find out what they're running and see what their experiences are so that you can then make an informed decision. And so I did the same for my Accord, but mostly you would know if you're going to go overseas, unless you're going to go to the Japan market or to the UK market. If it is the American market, it's going to have to type in the TSX. So you have to ensure you look for the US version of your car if that's what you're going for on the World Wide Web. You won't find much information on the right-hand drive vehicle for certain car here, unless we put them up. And so when you go on those forums, you'll be able to see what type of suspension they're running. So if you go in as a person who is new to this thing, start with the forums, and that will guide you in ensuring that you make an informed decision. You don't have to make the same decision, but at least you will be more informed to run a suspension setup or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. We'll talk about slamming the car in Jamaica back in the days, or even now still most people like the cut springs vibe. For persons who know me, I can tell you I'm not a fan of cut spring. Not because of just how non-practical it is, but just the fact that it is going to cost you in the longer run. You will be very disappointed if that's the route to go. I can understand cutting a 1 coil or half coil, but when you start cutting 1 and 2, you are now changing the spring rate. I spoke about the spring rate earlier. Spring rate is very important to how a car rides. And so if your spring rate came out at 10 from factory and you cut that spring and get it to even higher or even lower, you're going to find out no matter how you cut and retread the shocks, that car is going to ride very uncomfortable. So for somebody who's trying to get into suspension, start on the forums. So I suggested the forums, but you know there are going to be some persons who just won't have the time to go through that. They just want it now, or they figure, let me just go with what is already in the market. For me personally, I can say I have a top 5, top 4 in terms of brands that is a go-to when it comes down to suspension. Alright, if we're talking one for me, and I might have a little bias in it, but I also have a good amount of experience myself and from other car owners, it's BC Racing coilovers. One, it fulfills the need that I was suggesting earlier that I'm recommending to you. It's rebuildable. It's fully customized. So for example, my setup that I'm running is one of one in the world. It's not one of one in Jamaica. It's not one of one in the Caribbean. You can contact BC Racing North America. I'm running a one of one in the world customized BC Extreme lowering coilover for my CL8.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
It was built and tuned for my car. We built that over the course of 6 months. But maybe you won't go through that road. So if you don't go BC Racing, and BC of course have a lot of options. You can go with their BR series, you can go with don't remember the other series, the BA series. But if you go BC Racing, you know you're getting quality. You can rebuild those shocks and you can customize the spring rates. They have 2 options. You have the standard kit and you have the extreme low kit. For persons like me that love the static life, there's only one option in terms of those options going forward, the extreme low. BC Racing's also come with good springs, but I would suggest Swift springs. I'm currently on Swift springs. Any coilover that is able to afford Swift springs, upgrade is a must. Swift springs, they're I think non-progressive springs, and that makes it easier to manage the stroke. It is very good in terms of weight distribution, very good in terms of handling. Swift springs is the #1 spring in the world, and that's for a fact. So that's option 1. Option 2, you cannot leave out TN. TN is the best in terms of getting that balance. You want comfort, you want low, TN. Nobody does it like TN. And they have a lot of options. They have the basics where you just literally replace the shocks and you use the same shock mounts, and they have the advanced, the Street Advanced Z. So you can get what you want tailored for your car. You have the Megan coilovers, you have the Function and Form coilovers. These are all brands that make coilovers and suspension for all setup across every car model. So for somebody who just wants to get into it, the #1 goal is TN, because TN you don't have to do a lot of thinking in terms of what you want. They have a generic things that work across all models. But if you're going to take it serious and like me, and you want to tune your suspension, BC Racing coilovers, whether it is the standard or the extreme low kit, is always the way to go. So those are just some of the brands I suggest. But let's say you're looking at your budget, because your budget is important. All right, so those brands that I mentioned is running anywhere between 700 to 1,000 US. in terms of the standard kit. If you're going to go custom like me, it's going to run a 1,800 US. You're not going to want to go to that level, fine. So you're going to stay in about the 400 to 600 bracket. So you're talking about the Rev 9, talking about the max speed, talking about those coilovers that would probably suit something which is a simple job, which is probably what you're aiming for. Out of those brands, personally, for me, when it comes to suspension, honestly, I think you should better wait.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
Wait to get the correct thing. Because if you do go on a brand that is not rebuildable and just going to give you a looks, you're going to get 6 to 8 months out of it properly. You're going to have to actually sell that use. If you do have a choice, then go Godspeed. Godspeed. Alright? But for me, remember, when you're doing anything, I prefer you do it right, and I prefer you save even if it's 1 year and get the correct thing rather than 1 month and put on something and damage your car. It's an investment, so invest properly. And I know what you're thinking, how do I get around in Jamaica on such a low static look? Well, not the lowest car in Jamaica, that's no surprise. And you will find that in anything you do, if you do it in stages, it's much easier. What am I talking about? What I said earlier, I started out by going lowering springs. That was just 1 to 1.5 inch drop. And I drove the car like that for maybe, Levar can tell you, Levar from Akka, from Team Monaco, maybe 2 years, 3 years. Because I want to ensure that I get that feel, all right? And so what you find is after that, I then continued my research, did the other things on the car, and then I went for what I would call the static look. So I defined what static is. And for me, I wanted to ensure that the car was static, all right? Like I always say, I put the capital S in static. So a lot of low cars in Jamaica, but there are not many static cars in Jamaica. What do I mean by static? Static means that if I lower my car 3 inches off the ground for today, if I should go out anywhere in Jamaica and that car rides on a bump, go up, down, no matter what, the car is always 3 inches off the ground.
It's not able to do that as much, all right? So bigger coilover,
And how do you achieve that? By removing as much suspension travel as possible. And that's what I did. So what you find is that you will always have a certain suspension travel so that the shocks, the shock valve will absorb and that's basically what you call absorb and rebound on the shock. And what I did was ensure I canceled everything known as rebound. And there are a lot of things you have to do to ensure you do that right, especially on an Accord. And so you have to find that you have to ensure that your bushings are different. You have to ensure that if it is that your engine is very low, the transmission is very low, you need an engine raise kit. If it is that you have axles that came on my car which were stock, that are very flimsy, you have to change them out. And so, like my followers will tell you, people know me, I changed out all my axles from another car, which is the only thing that I've never shared, which car I get those axles from. But my current axles are not Honda axles. You see those, I will show you those clips. I had to change those axles and then we had to modify them at a machine shop and put them into a Euro R hub. Because the next thing I had to do was I had to change the hub on my car, I had to change the whole spindle. So if you're going to go low, you have to commit. You're not going to be able to go so static on a stock suspension setup. And when we talk suspension, we're not talking the shocks and spring, we're talking the front subframe. We're talking everything that is on the front chassis of that car. So for me, that is what static meant. And so me traveling around in Jamaica, I can tell you, it wasn't so much a challenge. Not a challenge being this low because I took it in stages. And so because I know that if I put my car 1 inch off the ground, so then I'm going to rock a 1 inch setup off the ground, no matter where I go in Jamaica, how bad the road is, if the car goes up that bump and goes back down, it's going to be 1 inch off the ground. So people will say, oh, your front of your car is still so clean, or you look on some of the BMWs, because BMWs have a stance from factory. So the people say, well, I'm BMW low. I'm going to say, warm to the rest of your car low from the front of the car to the front wheel, warm to the rest of the car. But my car low all around, and that is something that I am very proud of. And so you find is that the BMW, most of the front lips, most of the other cars that are low mash up, because naturally them have rebound, and which is needed. You need a car to be comfortable. No, not for me. Fully track setup. And so capital S in the static for me, very easy. I can go many places. Been driving the car like this all around. What you'll find though in driveways that are very steep, I will take my time going. You take it from an angle. I have a lot of videos that I put up talking about how to do this. I've tried to pass on as much information I have. So there are ways on how to do it. And people say sideways. Sideways is not just sideways. Most people don't know that when you turn a car at a certain angle, your car is higher than it is than if the wheels were straight. There's a certain angle that if you turn your car, your car will be higher than if the wheels were straight. And that alone is an approach. My car is 4-wheel drive. That also gives me another advantage. You will find that if it is that I'm going over a sleeping policeman or something, I'm never worried about the fact that maybe the front wheels are going to lift off and somebody going to come and jump on the front chassis like you see in those videos. Not for me. If any one of my wheels is on the ground, my car is going to go over it. The next thing I did was invest in some very high polycarbonate splitters. My splitters are like the flow splitters coming from top one. You can take it and throw it downstairs from the 15 floors. They are not going to break. And so in putting that under my car, you ensure that my car will be able to glide over anything. So you will hear it scraping, but those splitters will not break. And as such, they also protect my kit. So my splitters, while for looks, are more for function. These are the things that you have to think about if you're going to lower your car. If you're going to lower your car smart. If it is you want to keep it, or you can lower the car or cut spring and bounce across Jamaica. Let's talk about suspension. Suspension have many components. What about the wheels? The wheels are a very important part of those components. So in terms of choosing the right wheels for your car, research again. We spoke about them earlier. We talked about the fully cast wheels. We talked about the hybrid wheels, which is basically a combination of forged and cast wheels. Those wheels are what is taking the market by storm now. So we call them free flow. People have different names for them. And then we talk about the fully forged wheels. And so in terms of choosing the right suspension, after you finish with the shock setup and etc., if you're going to need an engine raise kit, if it's a BMW where those engines are lower than the front subframe, unlike my Accord where my front subframe is low, I don't need to worry about that so much, but I still have an engine raise kit on my car. You'll find that the wheels are very important, because if you're going to lower your car, you want to have a certain type of look. So we'll talk about the different stance look earlier. We'll talk about the flush, we'll talk about the tuck, or we'll talk about the poke. What is the objective? And so if it is that you're going to lower your car, most people will go with the tuck look. And so you need to ensure it's a simple way to measure and fit wheels. We're talking about the fitment. It's very simple. You literally take the tape measure and put it to the tip of the suspension. I shouldn't say suspension, but to the shocks. And you carry it out to the wheel well and how far you want it to go out. And look at that measurement and see how wide those wheels are. So in terms of rims, we know how the rims measurement gone. Just in case you don't know, an 18/9 rim is actually 10 inches wide. You measure from the inner rim you measure from inside bolt to the inner rim. Alright, so that would be 9 on the inside, but if you measure from the outer part, it would be 10. So when somebody said they're running an 18/9 rim, it's actually 10 inches wide. So I'm currently running that. So it was a simple measurement to get that. First, I started out with 7.5 rims, but I was running stock calipers. I had an issue with that, and me, whenever I'm replacing anything, I don't replace it with the same part. It has to be an upgraded part. And so instead of going back with a 1 piston, I went with a 1-of-1 4-pot Brembo system for my car. I'm the only person running that system currently in the Caribbean. Somebody running that on their TS6 up there, big him up. But I'm the only person running that Brembo system on a car. And so you find you're going to need a rim that has a very deep back pad so that it will clear the caliper, or you'll need to have a very huge spacer. And so for me, you find that I left from having a 35 offset to now running a -5 offset. How did I reach -5? I started out at 15 offset. which was just enough to clear the calipers, but by then I was only 2 inch lower. The more you lower the car, those rims are going to tuck. You're going to get more of a negative camber. And you find that while I started positive, then went even with my H&R springs, the more I lower my car, you find that the top of the rim tucks in. It's just natural, squat to get that excess camber look. And so for me, I don't like too much camber. It's not good for my tire, and I personally don't like too much camber. And so every time I lower my car and the wheel tends to camber in too much, what I do is add more inches to the spacer, add more millimeters to the spacer. And so I moved from a 15 offset, now running -5, and still give me that even look. And so when you're choosing rims, I would say, what is the objective? You can start with budget. Is always budget, and it's always easier to take the quick and cheaper option, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best option. And cast rims will put a lot of pressure on your suspension parts. You're going to be changing bushing regularly, especially if you're low, because that suspension is now lifting without tire 27 pounds. I went with the famous Enke rims. Had to go the RPF 1 rims. 17 pounds per rim, it's a no-brainer. First time I carried my rim to tire shop on Hope Road, and I took out the 4 boxes, and Mr. Brown, I don't know Mr. Brown, go in the box and grab the rim and lift it up. He nearly fell over. The rim too light. He was lifting it with so much force, he nearly fell over. That to me is enough to let me know that I choose the right rim. And then you have to go with the right tire setup. What type of look you want? You want a slight stretch, you want a flat look, or you want a bulge look? It is very simple to get the tire look, people. A lot of people ask me all the time, how you get the tire look? I just tell it's 18 by 9, which means that the rim is 10 inches wide. Take 10 inches and convert it to millimeter, because the tire measurement is going to be 235, 245. That measurement across is millimeter. So if 10 inches should give you 265 millimeter, and I'm talking from the top of my head, you know that if you get a 265 tire on that 10 millimeter, which was converted to that, it will have a flat look. And how much more you want that tire to kind of go in is how less of a millimeter it will take. So if you want it to go in now 10 millimeter less, you go 255. 20 millimeter less, 245. You have to be careful which brand of the tire you choose, but that's another topic. So a lot of things we say throughout this session. For me, remember that if it is that you want to reach a goal, you have to have an objective. What is it that you want to achieve with your car, or the car that you're going to get? You want it to look a certain way, those are the things you're going to research and get. You want it to go as fast as a certain car, those are the things you're going to research and get. So for me, I can tell you where my car reached. I'm very proud. It was a slow process because I planned to own this car for a while. I've had this car over 10 years. First owner in Jamaica, as I tell you. So I take it very slow because I know I'm not selling the car tomorrow. So somebody come and will say, really, how much I sell the car for? It's not for sale. For about 1 year, I had a not for sale sign on the car just because I couldn't go nowhere without somebody come and ask me, well, I buy the car and offer anything. But my passion is different. I love this car, and I love the car community. And so when I'm in the streets, I get a lot of hail. Mostly from people who follow me on my page. I get a lot of hail because I always try to help. I think I'm willing to share information. That's what I would like to believe. And so when people also look on the car, some people, it's not everybody have what I would call the eyes, a car enthusiast. You have some people just buy a car and them just want to change the color or put on a certain rim. But for some people, when they look on the car, they're actually able to see that there was a lot of work that go in this car. It might not the loudest color, it might not have the most pretty lights or whatever it is that grabs certain people's attention. But when you look at it, you see that it's modified and yet it's clean. It is not that far from stock because the car in itself comes stock as a pretty car. And so in the streets, a lot of respect, a lot of love. And for young enthusiasts who are coming out, I want to say, just ensure that you have the objective, ensure that if it is a low car you want, how we want it to look when it's lowered, research into those things, how to get it to look that way. There is almost nothing in the car world that have not already been done. You understand? Or somebody have tried it. So you can do different things. Do it for the first, so you can modify a headlight a different way. But headlights have been modified before. So research how to at least approach it. And that, for me, is the biggest help that I can give to you, to tell you to research. Research how to do it and how to do it proper. There are different methods to do it. They can do it the cheap and fast way, the cheap and easy way, and I'm never going to bash that, because we all go through that stage. Me go through that stage. All right? Personally, though, I can never recommend that stage, because it normally never pays off in the long run. And so I would always say, if you're going to take 1 month to save and get something that is a cheap and easier way, I would suggest waiting 12 months and getting it the correct way. I can tell you, I touched on it earlier, to set a car to look a certain way sometimes is as costly or even more than to boost a car. What am I talking about? For example, a Mugen body kit, like what is on my car. Just the grill alone is $400 US genuine. That's $400 US genuine. The lip that then goes under that is $950 US genuine. The Euro R lip. The Mugen skirts, which are rare genuine, is $1,500 US genuine. The rear is $2,000 US genuine. That's just the kit. So we're talking upwards of nearly $5,000 US. So somebody say, oh yeah man, I want to boost my car man, more with money in that. I would say, yeah, but you can get a good turbo kit, even a supercharged kit, J supercharger kit, for $2,200 US. And even if you tune it, it's still not reaching over near $5,000 US. So that's what I'm saying. What is the objective? Just ensure you do it the correct way. And so I just want to tell everybody, we could just live as one when it comes down to the car community. Share information, research information. I appreciate all cars. I appreciate fast cars, slow cars, low cars. Maybe I don't appreciate high cars as much, but I appreciate them. You know, everybody have their niche in this world. And so that's how I feel about the whole car life. And for me, I'm about the static life. Static JA. You can follow the page. You can follow the YouTube channel. You can follow me. You can follow me on Instagram. And so when it comes on to this world, we as car enthusiasts need to just ensure that we keep that passion. And if your passion is cars and something you feel passionate about, don't you think you should do it the right way? So let us do it the right way. So I just want to close off by saying big up everybody, the entire car community. Big up my real family, of course, wife, children. Don't know without someone I couldn't hear. My wife is the one who that ensure that maybe at first I'm not going to say she's how much I spend so much money on the car, but then she realizes my passion. And I think some way in it she kind of say, wait a minute, you know, I better I'm into the car than other things. And so she motivates me to continue that. Big up my car family, you know, Levar, Sishan, Jevi, Rollers, Andrew from Suzuki Sears, you know. Big up my brethren, Static International, run the Honda Civic. That's my car family, Static JA. And big up everybody who try to get the message across. You don't know Nick Lou, when I first man who see the car and go like, no man, him have the eye for he said, no, it's not normal. You know, people see the car and thinking normal. So Nick Lou, big up for getting me out there. You know, big up all the people who did the vlog, Breezy, big up Clay, Third World Society. Remember, my experience with Third World Society is very funny. And it's the first time sharing this story, although I've spoken to Clay many times, so I'm going to hear it for the first through this camera. I remember being on YouTube, just searching through cars. And I just say, you know, I'm just typing Sailate, because I know that many Sailate up there. You know, type Sailate, you just in my car. And I type Sailate, you know, which car I see. With somebody going in to sit down and drive, and then I said Third World Society. My car. And I'm like, so my car up on YouTube, I'm gonna know. So big up Third World Society for putting me out there. You know, and all the other persons who always, you know, share the passion, you know. I'm always here to help everybody. So remember, if you want to get a car to look a certain way, ride a certain way, just put in the effort. We'll do the same with everything else. And let us just come together as car enthusiasts and share that passion together by driving what we love, doing what we love, and like I tell you, keeping the respect. Much love. Static JA.